Hi, I'm Captain Larry Bell with Texas Fishing Tips, and this is your weekly fishing report.
Up here in Turtle Pen area, Shell Point, all this little back lake area here around this bend. There's a nice little back lake that kicks back off into here. You can wade this. It's really soft, but it's wadeable. There's been some nice redfish that's being pulled out of here. There's been some scattered trout in here that are nice box-sized fish. They've gotten really thick from all the eating. They're starting to really put on extra weight, getting that extra layer of fat and getting ready for the winter months that are coming. Other thing to be aware of, if you're fortunate enough to be able to fish during the week, then there are not as many duck hunters that are out. But if you're not, and you're having to hunt strictly fish on the weekends, be aware. The duck hunters are out. It's full-blown duck season now, and there's plenty of duck hunters that's going on. There's lots of blinds this year, so make sure that you're looking for decoys out there so you don't get yourself in a little bit of predicament there. So you don't want to mess with them because they're there early in the mornings. All that area in here, again, soft dines, corkies, down south, marker 54 mullet run has been good in the envy color. The white in there as well has been really good up and down on this shoreline here. As you get back into Turtle Pen, back here toward Copano Creek, this back shoreline, some more back lakes that you can fish, these mouths. Now, the one thing about these mouths that are back in here is these get really soft, so be careful if you wade this up in here. You may want to just stay on your boat, trolling motor into that, because I've tried to wade some of that, and it'll get up past your knees in some spots, so it gets really sticky. But it gives you opportunity. This bait's been pushed back in some of these mouths, and these redfish have been just kind of hanging out in these mouths around that and pushing up in those back lakes. Throw your top water in there. Let that be an indicator for you. See if you can see if you get any opportunities as far as blow-ups or swirls or anything to that effect. Get your down south and throw it in there and work it. Put that, again, the 16th ounce jig head is the ticket right now because these fish are starting to kind of move just a little bit slower. But the 16th ounce allows you to work it in the water column much longer, so you really give these fish an opportunity to take your bait. Continue working down this back shoreline. Off this point over here, there's a nice little gut area that comes around this little cove. There's been some redfish that's hanging around that. Again, pay attention to your bait. Pay attention to your majors and minors and seeing what's going on with that one. See where your moon phase is. Should be into, by that point in time, should be a full moon, backside of that full moon when that kicks in play. So downside of the bait, make sure that your majors and minors are a key factor in what you're doing during your process of that fishing day. Over here in Paul's Mott, off the point here, coming down this shoreline, little back lakes that's been in here. As you get into the mouth of Fence Lake area, if you fish this area, you know exactly where I'm talking about. These little bit deeper guts that are back in here have been real good for some trout. The burner shad in both the white ice, purple rain, chicken of the sea, all three of those flavors have been really good. The supermodel has been pretty good as well in the chicken of the sea and magic grass. And then the soft dines, your corkies. If you're a corky guy, man, work these guts in here with that. Those fish are really starting to smoke those baits really good. Catching some really quality fish hanging out in some of these areas in here, some of these deeper mouths that are there. Their bait's starting to really kind of concentrate in some of those mouths, so that's something to just be aware of and look for. See if you can get your plastics back in there. It's a very weightable gut. All these guts that are back in there are very weightable. They do get a little soft. You can probably get calf deep in some of them, but you'll be okay. Work the edges of them. Look for your bait working back in there. Work these baits that are up and down in this thing. The redfish are kind of scattered right now up on this shoreline. Most of them are going to be back in the lakes. Black drum are back in those lakes. So if you got your boat that's a skinny water boat and you can get it back in there, take it back in there. But the one thing you need to pay attention to is pay attention to those tides. If those tides start to really drop out on you, those fish are going to dump off of that and dump out there in front of those mouths of the lakes. And you don't want to get yourself stranded back there. So make sure that you're paying attention to that. Make sure you're paying attention to the weather reports this time of year, because a lot of that stuff can kind of creep up on you and you're not paying attention to it, and you get yourself in a little bit of problem. So make sure you're looking at your weather report, your tide reports, what's going on with your majors and minors during this time frame. Locate your bait that are, again, in these back lake mouth drains. Become a really point of emphasis when the water's really starting to drop out. And we haven't had but maybe one opportunity where we've had some really low tides, which was a couple of weeks ago. And if you were able to fish some of the drains up and down the St. Joe shoreline, you probably had really productive day, or if you found some areas that were just like that elsewhere, you probably had a pretty productive day. So again, those will be things that you need to look for, need a thing to locate. Again, work those baits up in those mouths and just try to locate your fish hanging back in those mouths. Sherman's, this area right through here, just down from Jaybird Point before you get to the Spalding Bight area, this is a big, nice back lake. It's got several duck blinds in it, so again, make sure, if you're hunting the weekend, make sure that you don't see hunters that are in there, because that won't be good for you. They won't want you in there, and you don't want to be around that. So make sure you look for decoys that are in these areas here, because there's a bunch of duck blinds that are up and down the St. Joe shoreline, especially going down toward the Spalding Bight area. But if you're fortunate enough not to have people in here already, get back up in this back lake, depending on what your wind is doing, and make sure that there's plenty of water in there. There's been some very nice redfish that are being caught out of here. Topwater action back in this thing has been spectacular. You find that knee-deep water in here. It's been pretty clear, but that's okay. As you get a little bit smaller, get a spook junior, maybe a she-dog in here, where you can really chunk that thing a long way out. And you can find there's been a couple of pods of smaller redfish that have been back in this area just kind of cruising and working, but they've all been in that mid to upper slot redfish, so they've been really good fish. But they've been a lot of fun to catch. So look for that area back in here. It's a really big lake. If you've been in it before, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you have not, you'll be pleasantly surprised how big this is. Lots of grass in here. So if you're going to throw a plastic in here, make sure that there's enough water for you to throw the plastic. Downsize to the 16th. Maybe even put you a weedless set up there on it so you can really work through the grass if plastics are your thing and you don't want to throw a plug. But the plugs have been money. I'm just telling you, if you like throwing plugs, this is a lake that you really want to get into, because you can really search with that plug. You can work the shorelines, you can work the middle, you can work the far shorelines, getting in the skinny areas. You can spend a whole day in here and not cover it all if you take your time, and you'll locate fish. Another thing too is you can get back here on the backside here, and it takes you into another back lake. Again, this is another area that you want to pay attention to. Again, the tides are the main thing on this deal up here. If you don't have enough water in here, it's not going to be fishable for you. So if your tides are right, get back in these areas and work all these areas. Get your boat back to a certain area that you can jump out of it and weight it, because it's all weightable. It's a little soft, but it's all really weightable. And if you'll do the work and put it in here and locate with that plug, or again with your plastics if you want to. It's going to be a little hard. You can probably work, if you're skilled enough with the corkies, the floater, you can work those back in here. But it becomes a little bit troublesome with the amount of grass that's back in there. That's why I suggest the weedless setup or the topwater plug. If you got trebles on the bottom of those topwater plugs, put some single hooks on there, and it'll turn it down just a little bit more for that weedless action on there, because there is a lot of floating grass as well. But all this area back in here is very accessible, very doable to fish. And again, there's been some nice redfish that are cruising up in here. You can even pull out occasional trout in there too. That's been pretty nice as well. Some mid-slot trout in that 18 to 21 have been caught out of here as well. Some beautiful fish. So be aware of all this. Again, incorporate that major and minor, and pay attention to those tides in the upcoming weather that we're going to have.
Thanks for watching. I'm Captain Larry Bell.